Welcome back to the channel, fellow seekers of wisdom. In a world of constant distraction and shallow relationship advice, we're taking a different approach today. We're going deep into the intersection of ancient Stoic philosophy and modern relationships, specifically what smart men should avoid in their interactions with women. Before we begin, let me clarify something important. This isn't about manipulation tactics or how to get the girl. The Stoics were concerned with something far more profound, living a life of virtue, wisdom, and inner peace. And these principles, when applied to relationships, create something remarkable: connections based on mutual respect, authenticity, and strength. For those new to the channel, Stoicism emerged in ancient Greece around 300 BCE and was later embraced by the Romans. Figures like Seneca, Epictetus, and Emperor Marcus Aurelius developed a practical philosophy centered on distinguishing between what we can and cannot control, focusing on our own virtue, and maintaining emotional equilibrium regardless of external circumstances. So how does this ancient wisdom apply to modern relationships? That's exactly what we're exploring today with these 9 critical mistakes that Stoic-minded men avoid in their relationships with women. Whether you're single, dating, or in a committed partnership, these insights can transform how you approach connections with others. Let's begin our journey. Point 1. Don't abandon your principles for approval. The first mistake many men make is compromising their core values and principles simply to gain a woman's approval, attention, or affection. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor, wrote in his personal journal, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." This straightforward guidance applies perfectly to how we conduct ourselves in relationships. Consider this scenario. You have strong convictions about certain lifestyle choices. Perhaps you don't drink alcohol, or you prioritize saving money over lavish spending. Then you meet someone who lives differently. The temptation arises to downplay your values, to pretend they're not important, just to seem more compatible or appealing. This compromise might seem small in the moment, but it establishes a dangerous pattern. You're essentially communicating 2 things. First, that your principles are negotiable, and second, that you value external approval more than internal consistency. Let me share a story from a viewer who wrote to me last year. Michael had always been passionate about environmental conservation. It guided his lifestyle choices from the food he ate to the products he purchased. When he started dating Sophia, who didn't share these concerns, he began hiding his environmentalism. He'd throw recyclables in the regular trash when she was watching, ordered takeout in plastic containers despite his previous stance, and stayed silent when environmental topics arose among friends. 6 months in, he felt disconnected from himself and resentful towards Sophia, not because of her different values, but because of his own betrayal of his principles. The relationship eventually ended, but the lesson remained. Compromising your core values creates internal conflict that eventually damages the relationship anyway. A woman worth having in your life will respect you for your convictions, even when they differ from hers. In fact, integrity is magnetic. It demonstrates character, reliability, and inner strength. This doesn't mean being rigid or judgmental. There's a crucial difference between standing firm on principles and being inflexible about preferences. A principled man can respect differences while maintaining his own ethical foundation. Ask yourself regularly, am I making this decision based on my principles, or am I trying to avoid conflict or gain approval? As Epictetus said, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. The Stoic approach is clear. Your primary relationship is with your own virtue and character. Everything else flows from that foundation. Point 2. don't neglect self-development. The second critical mistake is putting your personal growth on hold once you enter a relationship. Epictetus taught, "Make it your study to live with yourself first of all, to be company for yourself." This profound insight reminds us that the relationship with ourselves must remain primary throughout our lives. Many men fall into a pattern of arrested development once they secure a relationship. They stop reading books that challenge their thinking. Their fitness routines fade away. Their goals and ambitions are placed on the back burner. Their friendships wither. Essentially, they pour all their energy into the relationship while neglecting their continued evolution as individuals. This approach is problematic on multiple levels. First, it creates an unhealthy dependency where your partner becomes responsible for your fulfillment and happiness. Second, it leads to stagnation, and stagnant water grows stale. Consider what attracted your partner to you initially. Was it not your passions, your knowledge, your goals, your energy? By abandoning these aspects of yourself, you're no longer being the person she was drawn to. Seneca observed that constant exposure to one thing makes the mind numb. This applies perfectly to relationships where both parties have ceased to grow individually. The conversations become predictable, the dynamics stale, the connection dulled by familiarity without growth. Let me share another viewer's experience. James wrote to me about how his relationship of 7 years ended despite no major conflicts or issues. When he reflected honestly, he realized that both he and his partner had stopped evolving about 3 years in. They became comfortable, then complacent, then bored. The relationship didn't die from conflict. It died from stagnation. The Stoic approach to relationships embraces continual self-improvement as a fundamental responsibility. This isn't selfishness. It's ensuring you bring your best self to the relationship day after day, year after year. Practically speaking, this means maintaining dedicated time for physical training to keep your body strong and energetic, mental development through reading and learning, pursuing meaningful work and projects, reflecting on your character and addressing weaknesses, cultivating wisdom through study and application. Remember, an empty vessel has nothing to give. By focusing on your growth, you become not just a better partner, but a more complete human being. As Marcus Aurelius advised, dig within. There lies the wellspring of good. Ever dig, and it will ever flow. Point 3. Don't react emotionally to tests or provocations. Our third point addresses something many men struggle with: overreacting to tests, provocations, or challenging situations in relationships. Seneca, who wrote extensively about anger management nearly 2,000 years ago, advised, "The greatest remedy for anger is delay." This simple but profound guidance is particularly valuable in relationship dynamics. Women, consciously or unconsciously, sometimes test the emotional stability of their partners. This isn't manipulation. It's an evolved mechanism for gauging whether someone is reliable under pressure. Can you remain steady when challenged? Or do you crumble into anger, insecurity, or neediness? Consider this common scenario. Your partner makes a comment that triggers your insecurity. Perhaps she mentions an ex-boyfriend positively, questions a decision you've made, or simply seems distant when you expected affection. The untrained response is immediate reactivity, defensiveness, accusation, withdrawal, or desperate attempts to regain approval. The Stoic approach is fundamentally different. It begins with what psychologists now call the meta moment, that crucial pause between stimulus and response where your freedom lies. In that space you can ask, is this interpretation accurate? Is a reaction necessary? What would my best self do in this moment? Epictetus taught, make it your study not to be carried away by the impression, for if once you gain time and delay, you will more easily become master of yourself. This practice of emotional self-mastery was central to Stoic psychology. Let me illustrate with an example. David wrote to me about a turning point in his relationship. During an argument, his girlfriend said something particularly hurtful about his career ambitions. His habitual response would have been defensiveness or counterattack. Instead, remembering our discussion on Stoicism, he paused, took a breath, and simply asked, "That's interesting. Can you tell me more about why you feel that way?" That simple pause and question completely transformed the conversation. His girlfriend, expecting the usual defensive reaction, instead opened up about her own insecurities about the future. What could have been another damaging argument became a connecting moment of vulnerability and understanding. The Stoics recognized that emotional reactivity is a sign of internal weakness, not strength. True power lies in responding thoughtfully rather than reacting instinctively. As Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. When faced with tests or provocations, remember that your reaction reveals far more about your character than the provocation itself. By cultivating emotional stability, responding rather than reacting, you demonstrate true masculine strength, not the fragile kind that shatters under pressure, but the resilient kind that remains steady regardless of external circumstances. Point 4. Don't try to control what cannot be controlled. The fourth mistake is attempting to control things outside your influence, particularly your partner's feelings, thoughts, or actions. This principle touches the very core of Stoic philosophy. Epictetus opened his manual of Stoic teaching with this fundamental distinction. Some things are within our power, while others are not. Within our power are opinion, motivation, desire, aversion, and, in a word, whatever is of our own doing. Not within our power are our body, our property, reputation, office, and, in a word, whatever is not of our own doing. In relationships, this distinction is crucial, yet often overlooked. Many men exhaust themselves trying to control aspects of their relationships that are fundamentally outside their control. Their partner's feelings toward them, their partner's past experiences and history, how their partner interprets their actions, their partner's independent choices and decisions, who their partner chooses as friends, how their partner expresses herself. This attempt at control manifests in various destructive behaviors: excessive jealousy, monitoring communications, restricting friendships, manipulating through guilt, or demanding constant reassurance. All these behaviors stem from the same fundamental error: believing we can and should control what others think, feel, and do. The irony is that attempts to control often produce the opposite of the desired effect. The more you try to control someone's feelings toward you, the more those feelings tend to diminish. The more you try to enforce loyalty through restrictions, the more you inspire the desire for freedom. Consider this perspective shift. Your partner is not your possession, but a separate being who continually chooses whether to be with you. Your job isn't to control that choice, but to be the kind of person they would wisely choose day after day. A viewer named Robert shared his experience with this principle. After multiple failed relationships characterized by jealousy and control, he realized he couldn't continue that pattern. In his current relationship, he made a conscious decision to focus only on being his best self and respecting his partner's autonomy completely. The result wasn't the disaster his fears predicted. Instead, the relationship flourished with mutual trust and respect. The Stoic approach shifts focus from external control to internal excellence. Rather than trying to ensure your partner never leaves you, focus on being the kind of partner worth staying for. Rather than demanding loyalty, be worthy of loyalty. As Marcus Aurelius advised, waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be one. This shift from external to internal control is liberating for both you and your partner. It replaces anxiety with purpose, possessiveness with respect, and insecurity with dignity. Point 5. Don't hide your authentic self. Our fifth point addresses the temptation to present a carefully curated version of yourself, rather than showing authentic vulnerability and humanity. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself to be your own master and look at things as a man, as a human being, as a citizen, as a mortal creature. In relationships, this means showing up as your complete self, with your strengths, weaknesses, quirks, and contradictions all integrated into a whole person. Many men exhaust themselves maintaining a persona they believe women want, always confident, never uncertain, always strong, never vulnerable, always knowing, never learning. This performance might work briefly in the early stages of dating, but it creates an unsustainable dynamic that prevents genuine connection. Consider what happens when you hide aspects of yourself. First, you create distance. The person is connecting with your performance, not you. Second, you establish a precedent of inauthenticity that's difficult to break later. Third, you attract people who are drawn to your persona rather than your authentic self, leading to incompatible matches. Let me share a story from my own experience. Years ago, I presented myself as exceptionally confident and self-assured when dating, hiding my introspective, sometimes anxious inner world. The relationships that resulted were superficial and ultimately unfulfilling. It wasn't until I began showing up authentically, expressing doubts, sharing fears, admitting when I didn't know something, that I developed connections with genuine depth and staying power. The Stoics valued truth in all things, including self-knowledge and self-presentation. Marcus Aurelius wrote extensively about the importance of living without pretense. If it is good to say or do something, then it is even better to be criticized for having said or done it. This doesn't mean sharing every thought or emotion without discernment, nor does it mean burdening new connections with excessive personal history. Rather, it means being truthful in how you present yourself, acknowledging your limitations, and allowing your partner to know the real you over time. The paradox is that vulnerability, when expressed appropriately, doesn't communicate weakness, but strength. It takes courage to be seen fully, to stand before another without armor or pretense. A relationship built on authenticity may develop more slowly, but it will be far more meaningful and lasting. As Seneca observed, the person who attains wisdom also attains freedom from worry. When you no longer exhaust yourself maintaining a facade, you can direct that energy toward genuine connection instead. Point 6. Don't neglect your other relationships. The sixth mistake is allowing your romantic relationship to consume all your social energy, neglecting friendships and family connections that provide balance and perspective. Seneca wrote extensively on friendship, considering it essential to a well-lived life. He noted, "The wise man is self-sufficient, yet he desires friends, neighbors, and associates, no matter how much he is sufficient unto himself." This seemingly contradictory statement contains deep wisdom. Independence and connection are not opposing forces, but complementary strengths. Many men make the error of disappearing from their social circles when they enter a relationship. Friendships that took years to build are suddenly placed on hold. Family visits become rare. The entire social world contracts to revolve around the romantic partner. This pattern creates several problems. First, it places unhealthy pressure on the romantic relationship to fulfill all social and emotional needs, a burden no single relationship can bear. Second, it creates isolation that limits perspective and feedback. Third, it builds resentment over time, as both partners feel the suffocation of excessive togetherness without the refreshment of outside connections. A viewer named Michael shared how this realization saved his marriage. After 5 years together, he and his wife had fallen into a pattern where they were each other's only significant social connection. The relationship had grown tense, with minor irritations magnified by their isolation. Following advice from this channel, Michael reconnected with old friends and encouraged his wife to do the same. The space and perspective these outside relationships provided revitalized their connection with each other. The Stoics understood that human beings are social creatures who thrive in community. Marcus Aurelius began his meditations by acknowledging all the people who had shaped his character and thinking. For all his power as emperor, he recognized his interdependence with others. A Stoic approach to relationships maintains a balanced social ecosystem. Your romantic partner should be a central relationship, but not your only one. Diverse connections provide different perspectives when making decisions, emotional support from multiple sources, intellectual stimulation through varied conversations, resilience during relationship challenges, opportunities for individual growth and experience. Consider implementing a deliberate practice of maintaining connections outside your romantic relationship. Schedule regular time with friends, maintain family bonds, participate in communities related to your interests. These connections strengthen rather than threaten your primary relationship by making you a more balanced, fulfilled individual. As Epictetus advised, consider first who you are, a human being with no quality greater than the power of choice. Exercise that choice wisely by cultivating a rich network of relationships that support your growth and well-being. Point 7. Don't value physical attraction over character. Our 7th point addresses a common pitfall: prioritizing physical beauty and attraction over character, virtue, and compatibility when choosing partners. Epictetus asked, "What is the first business of one who practices philosophy? To get rid of self-conceit. For it is impossible for anyone to begin to learn that which he thinks he already knows." Similarly, we must examine our preferences and ensure we're valuing what truly matters for lasting connection. Physical attraction is natural and important. I'm not suggesting otherwise. What I am suggesting is that making it the primary criterion for choosing partners leads to superficial connections that rarely withstand life's inevitable challenges. Consider how this plays out. A man selects partners primarily based on physical appearance, ignoring warning signs about character or compatibility. The initial excitement eventually fades, as it always does, revealing foundational problems in values, communication, or emotional maturity. The relationship becomes a struggle rather than a support. When challenges arise, as they inevitably do in any life, the connection lacks the depth to weather the storm. A viewer named James shared his journey with this principle. After a series of visually striking but emotionally turbulent relationships, he decided to consciously broaden his criteria. He began prioritizing qualities like kindness, emotional intelligence, integrity, and shared values in his dating life. The woman he eventually committed to wasn't what he would have considered his type physically a few years earlier, but their connection had a depth and ease his previous relationships lacked. 5 years later, he describes it as the most fulfilling relationship of his life. The Stoics would advise us to look deeper, to assess character, wisdom, and virtue when forming connections. Does she demonstrate patience, kindness, resilience, honesty, the capacity for growth? These qualities endure long after physical beauty inevitably changes with time. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "Beautiful things of any kind are beautiful in themselves and sufficient to themselves. Praise is extraneous. The object of praise remains what it was, no better and no worse. True beauty transcends the merely visual. This doesn't mean ignoring physical attraction entirely. That would be unrealistic and unnecessary. Rather, it means developing a more sophisticated understanding of attraction that includes character, intelligence, kindness, and compatibility alongside physical appearance. Ask yourself honestly, are your relationship choices aligned with your deeper values? Or are they driven primarily by physical appearance and the validation that comes from being seen with an attractive partner? The Stoic path requires this kind of honest self-examination. Point 8. Don't avoid difficult conversations. The 8th mistake is avoiding necessary but uncomfortable conversations out of fear of conflict or rejection. Marcus Aurelius advised, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." This applies not only to actions, but to communication. Stoicism values truthfulness, even when it's difficult, as essential to living virtuously. Many relationships suffer because men avoid addressing issues directly, allowing resentment to build rather than facing problems head-on. This avoidance might preserve short-term peace, but destroys long-term harmony. Consider these common scenarios. You're bothered by a pattern in your partner's behavior, but say nothing, hoping it will change on its own. You have concerns about the relationship's direction, but avoid discussing them. You want different things for the future, but don't bring it up to avoid tension. You feel hurt by something, but pretend everything is fine. You have needs that aren't being met, but don't express them clearly. In each case, the avoidance of temporary discomfort creates lasting damage. Small issues grow into major problems. Assumptions replace communication. Distance and resentment accumulate like sediment, gradually suffocating the relationship. A viewer named Thomas shared how this principle transformed his marriage. For years, he avoided discussions about their financial differences, his dissatisfaction with their intimacy, and his desire for more independence within the relationship. The unsaid words became a wall between them. When he finally began addressing these issues, gently but directly, the initial discomfort gave way to a much deeper understanding and connection. The Stoic approach is to address concerns promptly but thoughtfully. Epictetus taught, "Remember that it is not the person who has it in for you and attacks you who harms you, but your judgment that you have been harmed." This insight helps separate uncomfortable conversations from threats to our well-being. This doesn't mean being harsh or insensitive. It means having the courage to speak truth with kindness and the wisdom to choose the right moment. The goal is not to offload your feelings regardless of impact, but to communicate in a way that strengthens understanding and connection. Practical guidelines for difficult conversations include: choose the right time and setting. Focus on specific behaviors rather than character judgments. Use I statements to express your experience. Listen as much as you speak. Approach with the goal of understanding, not just being understood. Remember that discomfort is not danger. As Marcus Aurelius noted, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." The difficult conversations you avoid most are often the ones most essential to your relationship's health and longevity. Point 9. Don't let external validation define your worth. Our final point addresses perhaps the most fundamental error, allowing a woman's approval or rejection to determine your self-worth and emotional state. Epictetus taught, "Make it your study then to confront every harsh impression with the words, 'You are but an impression, and not at all what you seem to be.'" This applies perfectly to both rejection and praise in relationships. When you derive your sense of value from someone else's opinion of you, whether positive or negative, you surrender your power and peace of mind. Your emotional state becomes a reflection of their mood, their attention, their validation. Consider how this dependency manifests. Constant anxiety about her opinion of you, emotional devastation when rejected, excessive elation when approved of, changing your behavior to avoid criticism, defining your success by her attraction to you, feeling worthless when single, staying in unhealthy relationships to avoid being alone. Each of these patterns reveals the same underlying issue, an external locus of self-worth. The Stoics would see this as a fundamental error in judgment, placing your happiness in things outside your control. A viewer named Alex shared his journey with this principle. After a painful breakup left him questioning his value, he discovered Stoicism through this channel. The philosophy's emphasis on internal virtue over external validation helped him rebuild his sense of self from within. When he eventually started dating again, the difference was profound. He could enjoy connections without desperately needing them for his sense of worth. The Stoic man recognizes that his worth comes from within, from his character, virtues, and actions, not from external validation. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "Look within. Within is the fountain of good, and it will ever bubble up if thou wilt ever dig." This inner security is paradoxically what makes a man most attractive. When you no longer need approval, you become truly free. You can engage in relationships from a position of strength and sufficiency rather than need and insecurity. Practically speaking, this means evaluating yourself by your own standards of virtue and excellence, recognizing when rejection is feedback about compatibility, not worth, maintaining core practices that center you regardless of relationship status, approaching relationships as opportunities to share rather than validate, viewing yourself as complete whether single or partnered. As Seneca advised, he is a great man who uses earthenware dishes as if they were silver, but he is equally great who uses silver as if it were earthenware. It is the sign of an unstable mind not to be able to endure wealth. Similarly, the Stoic can enjoy the gift of connection without being crushed by its absence. As we conclude our exploration of Stoicism and relationships, remember that these 9 principles aren't about manipulating women or playing games. They're about becoming a man of substance, character, and wisdom. A man who brings value to relationships rather than seeking validation from them. Let's review what we've covered. 1. Don't abandon your principles for approval. 2. Don't neglect self-development. 3. Don't react emotionally to tests or provocations. 4. Don't try to control what cannot be controlled. 5. Don't hide your authentic self. 6. Don't neglect your other relationships. 7. Don't value physical attraction over character. 8. Don't avoid difficult conversations. 9. Don't let external validation define your worth. Each of these principles connects to the core Stoic concepts of virtue, wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance. Together, they form a comprehensive approach to relationships that honors both yourself and your partner. Remember what Epictetus said: first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. Decide what kind of man you want to be in your relationships, then align your actions with that vision. As you incorporate these Stoic principles into your relationships, you'll likely find that you attract partners who value substance over appearance, character over charm, and authenticity over performance. More importantly, you'll develop the inner strength to navigate relationships with wisdom regardless of their outcome. Relationships, like all external things, are ultimately outside our complete control. They can bring great joy and meaning to our lives, but attaching our worth and happiness to them creates suffering. The Stoic path offers a better way: to engage fully while maintaining inner freedom, to love deeply without clinging, and to find strength in virtue rather than validation. In the words of Marcus Aurelius, the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. By shifting how you think about yourself and your relationships, you transform your experience of both. I hope these principles serve you well on your journey. Remember that philosophy isn't just theoretical, it's meant to be lived daily, tested in real situations, and refined through experience. If you found value in this video, hit the like button and subscribe for more content that blends ancient wisdom with modern life. Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your experiences applying Stoic principles to relationships. Until next time, remember, true power lies not in controlling others, but in mastering yourself. Thanks for watching this deep dive into Stoicism and relationships. If you enjoyed this exploration, check out my other videos on applying ancient wisdom to modern challenges. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss new content. For those who want to go deeper, I've created a free PDF guide expanding on these principles with additional practices and exercises. The link is in the description below. Which of these principles resonated with you most? Have you applied Stoic wisdom in your own relationships? Let me know in the comments below. I read and respond to as many as I can. And remember, in the words of Epictetus, make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens.